Hey guys, today we're going to work on a wood cabinet. This is the image of what the finished product will look like. I'm using Caliart Art today, but before we do that, we got to draw the item. Now, when you're drawing this, you have to think about the ratio, the proportion, the width to the height of it, if you're looking at it straight on. So I've done that. I've boxed out the overall height and width of it, and now I'm going to cut in and draw the details. Like, look at the bottom. If you're using a reference image, look at the negative space that you see. Look at the negative space on the top. Like, how much of the top of this cabinet do you actually see? Um, I notice a lot of my students seem to pull up much higher than the view, and so that creates like a distorted image overall. So just make sure you're looking very carefully at how much top of the cabinet you actually see, or if you're doing a chair, how much of the seat top do you actually see. And then once you do the proportion and you cut in, everything else should be a little bit easier. You know, you're offsetting some lines here and there and doing some details to get the overall story of what you're trying to say or trying to create. Now these are the colors I'm using from the Caliart marker set to create this. Um, you know, the best thing to do is always use a color reference sheet, like when you get any kind of marker set, so that you can be able to see like what you use as the base or what you'd like to use as a kind of color mixing set. So doing the overall metal parts, so those are the colors, or that's the color I'm using, and then here's another color. I always use like a little area off to the side to kind of test out my colors if I haven't done the color reference sheet. Um, so I can see like what is the best combination. Now I'm going to go ahead and use that same color to do the base of the wood. So when you're doing the wood, you're not going to just use one single color for wood, because if you look at the sample, there are nuances of different colors within the sample. So make sure that you are layering colors so that you can get a more rich composition. So it's not just one color, like that's the perfect color. A lot of things that we draw, it's going to be some kind of mixture or combination of colors. I always try to create a sense of shadow underneath so that it doesn't look like it's levitating in space. And here's like a warm gray that I'm using to kind of start to map out like where my wood planks will be and some shadows and general deeper areas. I mean, you could, if you were really bold, use the darkest color, but I have found that it's a lot easier to just kind of build from light to dark than to try to fix something that you've done, gone too bold and trying to come back. Now, when you are working with something that is going to be like a hard edge, feel free to use a straight edge. I like this particular straight edge because it's a see-through straight edge so that I can offset if I need to. Um, it just makes the overall finished piece look a little bit more clean. Even though you sketch freehand, I like to marker with the straight edge just to make sure my edges are clean. And then once the edges are clean, I'll do freehand inside. So I'm doing a little bit of like where the shadow will be with my brown marker, and then I'm going to try to do some wood grain. So it's starting to look like it has some more color to it. Trying to get some texture to it. But remember not to go on top of the metal areas that I have left like the gold tone. But I'm just laying out the pattern in the direction of the wood grain. Now we're going to go a little bit darker. So you're building the depth of the wood tone that you have. And so now you can see the contrast between the wood and then the metal areas. And then add a little areas for where there's a little bit of darker shadow. So things look a little bit more three-dimensional than it was when it was one single solid color. Now I'll work backwards and find a medium tone that bridges my very dark colors with my lighter values so that it's not such a high contrast area. Um, I'm just trying to find a way to make the colors look more seamless. Now we're going to use a darker color to emphasize the darker values and like the crevices and the grooves so that it starts to look, draw attention to the details. And again, use the straight edge so that way it's a little bit more clean. And don't forget, whenever your marker dries, it's going to look lighter than it does when it's wet. So remember to, take a break and come back and revisit it and see like those areas that you thought you had gone so dark and it looks so scary. It might not be so bad once you take a second look at it. So make sure you allow for some time to think about it and look at it and make it better. Now the last little bit that I'm going to be working on is using this white gel pen to kind of bring like the highlights to some like the metal uh, areas where it might have some kind of highlight to it, just to see if I can have more contrast to the dark wood surround. So, if you like the purity of just markers, then don't use the gel pen. And just make sure you plan in advance of not to get those areas, you know, markered up. Now I'm doing a little bit of super dark areas where the wood is a little speckled, and I think that should be it. All right, so I hope this helps you, and I'll see you next time.